Violence has disrupted Haryana's Gurugram. We're talking about a massive, booming business hub of the country. We're talking about Gurugram, a place for great business activity actually, a place that has been rocked by violence. For a developing economy, this is something we can ill afford. And yet it unfolds. It grabs headlines day after day. This, many say, has done incredible damage, incredible harm to the Gurugram image and across the world at that. Can business ever flourish in any kind of fear? Why have we reached this point, and what can the government at the center and the state, also the citizens at large, what can we all do to course correct? That's our discussion on India Development Debate. I'm Vikram Oza. But up front, let's bring you up to speed with what's trending tonight. In the Indian markets, the Nifty has declined for the second straight week, with 28 constituents of the Nifty losing. The IT index, though, has emerged as the top sectoral gainer this week, adding 3% to its value. Automaker Mahindra & Mahindra beats all three parameters, with its first quarter profits coming in at 2,770 crores. Meanwhile, State Bank of India is seeing its net interest income rise 25% year-on-year. Also on the earnings front, Britannia has seen its net profit jump 35% year-on-year, but both PAT and EBITDA have fallen short of estimates. Their revenue, though, is in line. The centre says there will be a transition period for new norms for the import of laptops and other IT hardware. The Confederation of All India Traders, meanwhile, hailing the centre's decision, saying that foreign goods are capturing Indian markets and this is a law that was required. Sources say that Byju's has now missed its 3rd August deadline for amending the terms for its loan from that TLB facility, but the firm, Byju's itself, is denying that claim. The Supreme Court has stayed Rahul Gandhi's conviction in the Modi surname case and has questioned the trial court's judgment to award maximum possible sentence. Rahul Gandhi's Lok Sabha membership is now likely to be restored. Well, let's talk about what is unfolding in Gurugram. It is quite interesting. Think of what has happened before that in Paris. You think of Eiffel Tower, you think of Notre Dame, you think of croissants and coffee. These are the images that you think of when you think of Paris. You will happily spend hundreds and thousands of rupees to take that trip to France, to Paris, to understand history, to understand art, to enjoy delicious food. But if you're forced to see visuals of riots every day beaming out of Paris, will you still as enthusiastically book your next trip to the French capital? Probably not. You see, only last month there were these riots in Paris. You're seeing visuals of that on your screens. And now it is estimated that those riots have cost the French dearly. French businesses have suffered more than $1 billion in losses. $1 billion is what we're talking about. It is a big hit. But tonight, of course, we're not talking about France. We are talking about Gurugram, India's booming corporate and industrial hub. A city whose glitz has even overshadowed the national capital, Delhi. You see, over there, 7 people have been killed. More than 70 people have been injured in all that rioting that has taken place in Nuh and the Gurugram districts of Haryana. While the violent clashes between two communities have widened the religious fault lines in the region, they've also exposed a booming business hub to threats of violence and disruption. Remember, 70% of Haryana's investments come from Gurugram alone. No surprise then that Gurugram MP and Union Minister of State for Corporate Affairs, Inderjit Singh, has acknowledged that the incident has dented Gurugram's image as a corporate hub and a prospective investment option. He's also said that people will be scared to migrate there or invest there, and that it is going to affect the entire state of Haryana. Peace and prosperity, after all, they are two sides of the same coin. Let's decode what's happening in Gurugram. How much of a dent has it caused to the image, and how much of a price we'll have to pay for the kind of damage that the violence has done in Haryana? For that, Harbhajan Singh is joining us. He is Chief Strategy and HR from XLRI in Delhi NCR. And of course, Mr. Lloyd Mathias is with us as well. He's an independent director. Great to have you with us, gentlemen. Coming to you first, Mr. Singh, from all accounts, Gurugram stands like this beacon. Among the newest economic activity in the country, Gurugram has established its image. And that's the exact place where you'll find multinationals, you'll find the presence of big Indian corporates, you'll find these startups, both the fledgling kind, the established kind. And Gurugram is where you'll find offices of 250 of the Fortune 500 companies. Now, looking at the violence that has erupted over there, how much damage, in your opinion, is it doing to the image that Gurugram has created for itself?
Well, like Gurugram, any activity, anything which happens in Gurugram is internationally followed.
Yes.
You know, like across the globe, I think that as you have mentioned, most of the Fortune 500 companies are here. So anything happening here is very widely acknowledged all over. And I think that it has caused a big dent in the image. The peace which was prevailing all these years was, enabling the state to attract investment. But with this incident, again, like investors will start rethinking about investing. And beside investment, the social fabric which is getting disturbed, schools getting closed, the sight of children getting affected by all this is a big loss which will happen, and the social harmony will take some time to resume its normalcy.
What do we put it down to, Mr. Mathias, to weigh in? Because here, like Mr. Singh is alluding, we're talking about the likes of Google, American Express, Dell, Samsung, you name them, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, they all have their presence in Gurugram. And of course, these companies are going to be assessing their security concerns for employees, of course. In such cases, how do you find typically corporates behave? What kind of action do you see them take strategically to safeguard their interests? For example, would you see a lot of them allowing more work from home to tide over this kind of period of violence?
Thank you, Vikram. I think the issue is serious. Like you said, I think the first thing is that businesses look for a safe and secure environment on which to run, right? That's the need of any business. They want to have an absolute safe and secure environment for themselves, for their staff, so that business can run unhindered and uninterrupted. And I think therefore the events of the last 4 or 5 days have cast a very, very big dent in Gurgaon's reputation. Here was, in a sense, India's startup city, the city that plays host to at least half of the global Fortune 500's India headquarters. So Gurgaon was emerging as, shall we say, a huge industrial city, clearly the powerhouse of Haryana. But what we've seen in the last week has been a huge denting of the image for a simple reason that when people don't feel safe, I think that's when they begin to reevaluate their entire priorities, right? Companies do not want to operate in an environment where their staff feels unsafe, where they have to perforce have people working from home. And given the fact that this has come literally a fortnight after the floods made, questioned or put Gurgaon's infrastructure in the dock. And maybe a couple of seasons back, we saw what pollution did. I think overall, this has been a very big dampener for the movement of business. If you look at the last decade, Gurgaon as a city has benefited the most with businesses moving in, with rapid industrialization, with world-class condominiums. But now suddenly, I think this has kind of taken it back a few years. And the fact that the state administration wasn't able to provide security and safety to its citizens obviously is not going to help Gurgaon in the long run. In short-term mitigation measures, companies have resorted to work from home, but I think these are temporary measures. And over time, I think companies will rethink their entire approach to this region. And therefore, this needs to be tackled at a war footing.
Mr. Singh, since you come from the Delhi NCR, do tell us, in your opinion, because Gurugram being so strategically important in terms of businesses, when you see an infrastructure, like Mr. Mathias is pointing out as well, for infrastructure needs of a place and the size and the scope of Gurugram, you see that crumble with the kind of flood situation that we've seen. And then, as part of a second story that emerges, you see violence unleashed. These can have telling effects. How exactly did it play out over there in terms of what you yourself experienced in terms of businesses and how they reacted to both these kind of events? Mr. Singh.
See, Vikram, this was unprecedented. This type of violence Gurgaon had not witnessed. Even the earlier disruptions which happened during Jat Andolan and all, Gurgaon had not witnessed such incidences where there was a widespread effect on the working of the corporates and also on the social life. I think this will take some time. We nowadays see protests being happening in the major areas like MG Road and even in Sector 57 and mosques being burned near the school and all. I think this is something which has to be dealt with strong arm by the government, and we cannot, ignore such incidents. And I find that administration has started taking strong measures. A lot of arrests have been made, and but I think it was late. The things could have been controlled much earlier at the right moments.
How severe is the damage to the brand of Gurugram? Let's ask Guru Prahlad Kakkar, who's also joining us. Prahlad, you've been understanding the brand space for such a long time. When that brand is an entire city, when you're talking about an entire place where businesses have come together, they've come there seeking peace and prosperity. Now, both of these are important for sustenance. I started out by telling our viewers about the kind of violence we've seen getting unleashed in Paris, a place that we associate with love. Now, that has gone out of the window when you see riots unleashed over there. We did change our travel plans. Tell us about Gurugram and what has fundamentally changed with the kind of crumble in infrastructure that we saw during the floods and now what we are seeing by way of violence there.
See, Gurugram and all these cities, firstly, the first thing they have to do is stop all religious processions. It does not matter which community it's from. Religion is meant to be practiced at home, and outside in the streets, you do business. Especially in a place like Mumbai or Gurugram, which are business cities, you don't have, you don't give permission. Firstly, it's not absolutely in the strictest order, no permission should be given for any religious processions whatsoever. Okay? Once you get a cap on that, then you realize that the people in any area which is either business or fun, it's basically it has to be secure. People want to go there and feel that they're not going to attack, get mugged, get burned, get abused, or whatever it is on the street. Now, what has happened to Gurugram right now with this particular spate of flood and violence, and the floods are going to keep coming because in the north we haven't designed our cities for climate change. And climate change is talking about drought one year and floods the next year. So it's going to be a permanent part of our lives. And if Gurugram is going to be underwater for 2 months of the year, then who would want to go there and start a business?
Exactly.
I wouldn't.
But is it any better anywhere else, Prahlad? Do say that, because India is trying to build a reputation for itself as a stable economy with good working conditions for corporates, inviting them to set up these manufacturing bases. How do you perceive these violent clashes hampering that larger pitch that India is making to the world?
Totally. Well, why would anybody want to set up a factory in a place where even a percentage of workers are from a minority community and they're scared as hell? So either they're living in the factory all the time or they're running away to the villages. And therefore you get total absenteeism. It's not possible, I mean, to run a business out of a place which is constantly in turmoil, whether it's underwater or whether it's rats. And these rats are not going to go away because, we've set a system for resentment. So the moment you have resentment, it's going to be seething, it's going to come out from somewhere.
Tell us how it works at the corporate level. When you're formulating strategy about the growth of a company, where you want to be present, how you want to be present, how the offices are going to be, what kind of employees you're going to draw, what are the considerations that you'd have before you? How do corporates actually function on these parameters?
Fundamentally, I think a lot of businesses look at what is called ease of doing business. And over the last decade, we've heard that India has made rapid strides in ease of doing business. But when you talk of ease of doing business, the areas that we try to work on were things like better infrastructure, easier and more compliable tax laws, better intellectual property protection, IP protection, and so on and so forth. But I think where we are stumbling right now is in the hygiene factors, the basic hurdles, right? Businesses will love better tax laws, lower bureaucracy, lower red tape, but as long as they get the basics in. And I think where Gurgaon has currently fallen short, and a lot of Indian cities are falling short, is on basics. If you can't provide basic law and order, if the cities don't have basic infrastructure, right? So if 2 hours of rain shut down a city, if communal processions on the streets shut down a whole city for about a week, schools get closed, I think these are big deterrents. And businesses look at that aspect. While India is a big market, it's attractive, we have a huge domestic population, affluence is growing, stock markets are booming. I think if we don't get these issues right, we'll have moved 1 step forward and 10 steps backward. And I think what has happened in the last week is highly avoidable. I mean, this is something that, proper state planning and administration could have prevented, right? Even the fact that Gurgaon is called the millennial city, if they had put basic infrastructure in place to take care of floods, I think if there were better kind of resolutions to this whole pollution menace that occurs every winter, I think things would improve. But the tragedy is that even as we are working on the higher order metrics of ease of doing business, we are failing at the basic ground level. Plain infrastructure, plain law and order maintenance, plain security. And I think that's something that businesses just don't take kindly to. And eventually what happens is businesses start moving out, right? We saw Bombay, have that, companies move out in the late 90s, early 2000s because of real estate prices being too high, because of shutdowns. We saw that happen to Calcutta in the 70s and 80s. And I think what's happening right now doesn't bode very well for the entire NCR region.
It certainly doesn't. And you raise a very valid point about the ease of doing business. As much as we hope that we rise on the ranks as far as ease of doing business is concerned, there are certain very basic areas that we are not able to get right. Mr. Singh, why are we not being able to do so? Where are we failing at the administrative level, at the corporate level? What are we not doing right to be able to offer the best to the world? Something that any corporate looking at an entry into India, looking at expanding within the country would ask for.
See, Vikram, now Haryana's ranking is number 3 in ease of doing business. And your point, what the corporates look for is industrial peace, government support, a good law and order, and a good, discipline among the workforce, which should be there. Unfortunately, there had been a lot of labor troubles in the past, but over a period of time, Haryana has overcome that and things have fallen in place. But the social unrest, like the recent one and some which have happened in the past, are again posing a new challenge, which will deter the industries to move in. Many organizations had threatened to move out of Haryana in the past because of the labor unrest, but because the government acted on those issues, so those things have been taken care of. But if social unrest now, start happening frequently, as we see it has happened in last 4 or 5 years, this is second or third incidence which is happening, it will create a major problem.
But,
my mind, the law and order. Law and order implementation at appropriate time is something which is very important. We miss on that time and again.
Yeah, we seem to be consistently missing out on that. But Mr. Singh, while you have been watching the human resource situation in the country, we have been talking about the unemployment rates. And one hopes that wherever there is industry, wherever there is business, there would be as many jobs. And if there are jobs, then as far as the local population is concerned, there shouldn't be so much social unrest. Is that a wrong theory, or shouldn't we be trying to be able to assimilate the kind of population that is in and around a key business area, trying to get them more into the labor force? Are we not being able to convincingly do that?
See, like Haryana has, especially areas adjoining to Gurgaon, had been predominantly a rural economy. The shift from rural economy to industrial economy, which took with the advent of organizations like Maruti, Hero Honda moving in, has provided a lot of employment to the rural area. And the rural economy has been greatly influenced by these OEMs which moved into this place. This place manufactures major portion of the cars, two-wheelers, so far as manufacturing is concerned, air conditioners and all. Any product you pick up, you will find that Gurgaon is something which a place where the majority of the production is happening. So when there was a shift from rural economy to industrial economy, it took some time for them to understand the nuances of industrial discipline. But I think that in this last 2-3 decades, the things have changed, and people have benefited from the industry. Even the land values which have gone up, the rental incomes which have increased for the adjoining villages have made the local population understand that there is a benefit from the industrialization and we must support it.
Prahlad, weigh in on this. When you're trying to create a brand story, when you're trying to tell the world that, look, this is a great place to come and do business in, how different is it doing so for a developing economy as opposed to a developed economy? How have we done on that count, and where are we failing the most? The obvious answer, of course, is there in this violence. We are obviously not doing the basics right, but tell us where we are failing the most in building and sustaining the brand story.
Well, I think we're doing a pretty okay job with the brand story, because these are little pockets of what you call success stories that have been added to BKC, Gurgaon, and so forth and so on in little pockets. But the fact is that nobody expected Gurugram to actually have such a sustained and such a violent kind of reaction to everything around them. They weren't, all the traffic has been stopped, people have been sent off to go to homes, and offices have not opened for the last 1 week. Now, that is huge, because a lot of companies have head offices there. So you can shut down a branch office temporarily, but you can't shut down a head office. So I think a lot of companies are going to start looking for alternatives to move to Hyderabad or Bangalore or some other place where it's a little more peaceful, and people are not so volatile.
So there will be options in a country as large as India. But Mr. Mathias, the effects of violence can really devastate communities. How do communal tensions reflect in economic activity? And perhaps you can give us a suggestion or two on how these can be mitigated as well, in your understanding.
Because when we had the riots in Mumbai, immediately the police went into overdrive and created mohalla committees so that people could get together and discuss things in a rational and quieter manner.
Correct.
Without people sort of just taking over with anger and violence and retaliation. So, first of all, immediately we had to set up what you call mohalla committees of all mixed people, especially where the mohallas are run by minorities who are now majorities. So they should have a representation. There should be dialogue between the police, between the two parties concerned. And you see, in Delhi and a lot of riots, everybody said that it wasn't our people who were rioting, there were outsiders who came in and instigated the riot.
Right.
So it's very important to actually keep outsiders out. And the only way you can do it is by constantly meeting all the time and making everything security tight, so that outside people can't come and instigate a riot in your community and bugger off and leave everything in shambles.
That requires
And a lot of
strong,
time-
yes, but that requires strong political will. When one has always seen Gurugram
it's not
as this...
just political will, it's a question of actually organizing communities into protecting themselves. Because finally, how much can the police do? They got 500 phone calls every night. There's a fire, there's a riot here, somebody's getting murdered here. So, like it happened in Delhi, every colony formed its own committee. And every colony looked after its own security. And they put in guard, they put in gates, and people were examined and said, who are you? Who are you coming to see? There's an intercom at the door where you can ring up anybody in the colony and say, is this gentleman your guest, or is he just come here to salute around? So
But
everything
this
got
is the
very
problem,
tightened.
Prahlad, and this is something that I'm citing as well. Gurugram, always known as this urban center, glitzy high-rises, luxury hotels, malls, gated condominia. You would expect, you know, these communities to come together in these kind of watches. That's something that they would do as a community to make sure that security is given the high accord that it needs to. Now, I was
Correct.
watching a video on Twitter which was talking about service staff actually not showing up at work. These were people collecting garbage over days. They were talking about how people are petrified to show up at work. When fear psychosis grips citizens, how do you even resurrect that image after the kind of damage it takes on the psyche of the people?
Well, you have to do a flag march by the army or some authority which is
So
respected
you
by the
require
people.
the security agencies to come in. Citizens alone cannot do it. Mr.
No,
Mathias, what do you say?
I think, Vikram, you've raised a couple of key points. I think the first part is, like you said, businesses require a safe and secure environment. The second, and I think Prahlad touched upon a bit, is that the government and the administration has to have a complete zero tolerance to breakdown in law and order, right? It's not impossible. I think Mohalla committees, flag marches are all part of the process. But I think fundamentally establishing the fact that there has to be zero tolerance. Businesses expect that as table stakes. That's hygiene. That's a given. You don't want to expose your employees to risks of danger to their lives, to pollution, to flooding. I think those parts are the first part that need to be taken care of. I think thereafter comes the other aspects of how to improve other parameters of ease of doing business. So I would say one is an absolute zero tolerance. But I'd like to move this debate, Vikram, to a little beyond just the issue of businesses. I think the big danger is that you're going to have a whole generation growing up in an atmosphere of fear and hate, right? And what the events of the last week have really shown is that it's not just the impact on business. What do you tell a 6-year-old who doesn't get to go to school for 4 days when everything around him seems normal?
Yes.
You tell him that there are riots on the streets, the fact that there are, in this day and age in India, in a developing economy, there are, communal clashes happening. How do you tell that to a 5-year-old?
Yes.
So I think having a whole generation grow up with fear, with an atmosphere of hatred, I think that is the larger damage that this issue has done. So
Yes.
it's more than just a business issue. I think it's a larger social issue. I think that's what should concern all of us.
Yes, absolutely. Fear psychosis can damage entire communities, and that's certainly not what developing India needs. We need peace, we need prosperity, and both of these need to come with each other. One needs to feed off the other. We're not able to do that consistently enough, and that is really the need of the hour, and it goes far beyond business. Well said, Mr. Mathias and Prahlad Kakkar. Mr. Singh, thank you all for joining us on this discussion here on India Development Debate. Thank you indeed. With that, it's going to be a quick wrap on the show, but of course the action continues on ET Now. We suggest you keep it with us, and we also hope you have a good weekend ahead and a safe one. Bye-bye.